their own personal, vehicle and put the taxi plates on it like I did back then, and they're forced to pay these big rental companies, who profit off of it. So that really only helps the big guys out there.
Big guys, yeah.
And it also, unless it's a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and then last summer they passed to where the electric vehicles are available now, but there's not that many charging stations in New York for electric vehicles. But even more recently, changing the amount of times that you could go online. So it used to be slow, but you would at least be able to go online and wait for a trip.
Right.
Now, if it's slow, they'll just log you off and you can't even work.
Right.
So especially for those people that did invest in money to buy a car a few years ago, it's harder for them to make money now. And the thing that doesn't make sense about it is the whole premise for de Blasio doing this is to try to cut down traffic. But the times that people can go online are the busiest times when there's the most traffic anyway. The time when there's no traffic is the times that people can't go online anyway. So, I mean, it's the rush hour traffic. You could work in both morning and evening, without having much of a problem. And it's the middle of the time when there's not much traffic on the street. So he really didn't accomplish anything but hurting the pockets of a lot of drivers out there trying to make a living.
I don't often, I'd say, agree with the mayor, but I do share the concern that we have to deal with congestion, and you have to deal with it some way. And I think what has happened is it's sort of a give and take. And I agree, it's a lot harder than when we were doing it. Like I work on the other side of it now. But when I was doing it, I think it was a little bit easier, and there was a little bit more flexibility. But unfortunately, there weren't as many benefits for the drivers. So it's sort of like a give and take. A lot of the drivers, and I was one of the founding members of the IDG, which is the Independent Drivers Guild, and we were in organizing to, try and get certain benefits for the drivers. And in some cases, it was better hours or some flexibility. Even using the bathroom was very difficult. It still is. And you could I mean, I remember you couldn't get to the bathroom if you had to go to JFK. It was hard to get to a bathroom. Anywhere in the city.
That's just driving when you have been holding in for a while. There's nothing more stressful in the world that I can think of. And you're on the road and you're stressed out, because you're holding it in for several hours. And there used to be McDonald's over on 34th Street that had parking. That's torn down now, and there's certain places where there's no place to park for drivers in Manhattan to use the bathroom. So, but I mean, one of the things that they did accomplish, the IDG, is the adding tipping to the Uber platform, because they never added. They had the whole premise that tips aren't, are included, but they really weren't, and making it seem like these drivers are making a killing when they're really not. It's a decent living, don't get me wrong, but tipping. And it kind of made people accustomed to not tipping their drivers anymore and stuff. So that was one of the negative things that Uber did, and one of the positive things that the IDG did, bringing it back.
And just it's something as silly as using the bathroom, but it's so important. You've been out there. When you're out there for 8 hours and you don't shut the app off, and you drive from JFK all the way to the Bronx, and before you drop someone off, you get another call, and you take the call. You don't know where you are. You don't know the area to find a parking spot or find a restaurant or find some place to go. And then you take that call, and that call from the Bronx into New Jersey. Now you've got to get out of Jersey. So you could be driving back and forth before you find a place to really pull over and use the bathroom. And as you know, parking, like you said, is very hard in New York City. So you don't want to risk. And then you get a ticket.
Yeah, double parking, using a ticket. I mean, I find the police officers are really somewhat flexible with double parked taxi cars and not giving tickets. I've never had, fortunately, haven't had the incident where I double parked and ran into a place for a few minutes and came back and never got a ticket. And knock on wood. But
as a driver, like you said, having whether it's the police and enforcement, TLC enforcement, the drivers, all of us have to kind of live together in the city. And I think you, as being both a driver as I was, as you were, and being someone who uses Uber, you get to see it from different perspectives. And I think one of the things we have to try and do is really find a balance, right? Find a balance where everybody can kind of get along and, bring all those voices together for transportation. It's such a complex network, Sort of Uber has really changed the whole cab industry, and medallions have really lost their value. A lot of people that lost their savings, and that's very tragic. But I think what's happening is the whole industry is being revolutionized, and transportation in general has to go through some big changes. And I think we got a lot of.
Yeah, I've had a lot of ideas on how to fix that, and I'll get into that if I eventually run for office, because I do have. I don't want to get into too many details, because I have my notes that and I don't want to say things without getting into forgetting one detail, whatever, because it's a little bit. It's not something that I could get into within a matter of a minute, or
Right.
So. But there's some ideas for
we have a special guest here. Sorry about that, everybody at home, but someone wants to be interviewed.
Well, now he's in the shot for sure.
So we have a special guest here. This is Kalai, one of my dogs, one of our family's dogs. She's the newest addition, and she'd like to be interviewed too. She has a lot to say, and she's very good friends with Mark. Mark is definitely one of her favorites. Yeah. So she came by to say hello, say she approves. Give a kiss. Okay. Go back down. So let's move into one last part. Talk about, speaking of driving and Uber, you also did another just very interesting thing. Really, it's crazy how many different things you do or involved in, and I think it really speaks to kind of the curiosity of a person you are. You talk about how you got into Uber years before a lot of people even gave it a shot, just because you were curious. What's this thing? And you investigated.
Well, I knew it was going to take off, so that's why I wanted to get in early, and that's why I wanted to build a fleet of cars. And I got to the second car, and it never expanded further than that, unfortunately, because of various reasons. But yeah.
But it's amazing how many different things you've dabbled in, how many things you've tried, how many things you've become good at, and it's fascinating. And I really, like I said, I think it just kind of speaks to your ability to try new things and see where the world takes you. Speaking of which, you now drive trucks. You've taken that on as a new endeavor. Tell us about that. Now, you told me the other day, you drove cross country, regular Teamster driving guy, across the country in a big 18-wheeler. So.
Unfortunately, I was a Teamster in my retail days, but not for a lot of truck companies aren't union, unfortunately, nowadays. But I did get my CDL. I went to Colorado to Careers Worldwide. It's a 3-week course out there in Colorado, and I got my CDL, commercial driver's license, Class A, 18-wheeler. I'm learning how to back it up and maneuver it, all different types of maneuvers that you have to do with it. And, it's a long process, but there's a national truck driver shortage out there because the baby boomers are retiring, and a lot of the youth, they look down at professions like drivers, that they're, whatever they, perceive it as, and they have their degrees, and it's a pretty good paying job, and like I said, I like driving, and I like the open road more than I do like the city. But the fact that I live here, I like the city, but the open road, going out there, seeing the mountains, seeing the desert, seeing all that all over the country was something I always wanted to do. Just maybe get an RV or something when I'm older. And a lot of people think that drive across the country in an RV.
Right.
Now, there's no bathroom in the trucks, but there's a fridge, there's a microwave, there's the bed, so it's like the next best thing. And probably even better because of the fact that I could actually get paid to do it, So I got paid to travel across the country, basically.
Right.
And it's something that I might dabble with again down the road, because I like the idea of being able to get paid to drive over to a city that I want to go to, and then spend a couple of days there, as opposed to paying for a flight. I'm getting paid to travel over to that destination.
Right.
That's something that I'll probably end up doing down the road, but we'll see. But only a few months experience with that, only about 3 months. I went through a long, grueling training process, and, you're kind of... I've either lived with my parents and siblings when I was younger, to my own apartment. And for, large portion of my adult life I've lived by myself, and then you go to school and you have all these roommates in an apartment, and then you're living in a small truck with your trainer for several weeks, and so it's